Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Skip, for that warm and friendly introduction. We value our partnership with you and everybody here at the Clinton School. It is really special that we have the opportunity to come here and talk and give you a sort of an in-depth, behind-the-scenes understanding of the work that we do at the Rep, and we're so grateful to have that opportunity, Skip. Thank you very much. And welcome to you. Welcome to Second City. We're so glad you guys are here. The last time we were here, we were talking about Les Mis. If you didn't get a chance to see it in Little Rock, please feel free to fly out to Phoenix. Our production of Les Mis is just opened in Phoenix last Friday and is running in Phoenix until the 1st of June. But we are very glad to be back and very glad to be opening Second City. And so let's begin. Let me ask each of our guests to introduce themselves and let you know where they're from. So we'll start on the far end and work our way this way.
Okay. Hi. Okay. I'm Sarah Shook. I currently live in Chicago, but I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland.
That mic is all funky. Here we come. Why don't you start over since we got half of that? They'll want to record it, so can try that mic.
Okay, here we go. Hey guys, I'm Sarah Shook. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland, and I currently live in Chicago.
Hi, I'm Marlena Rodriguez, and I'm from Connecticut.
Hello, I'm Scott Moorhead. I'm originally from a small town in Iowa, Clinton, Iowa.
They love that. They love every second of that. And my name is Anthony LeBlanc, and I'm from Beaumont, Texas, the border of Louisiana and Texas. But mostly, yeah, get into it. Go Saints, who dat?
And how long have you guys each been with Second City?
I've been with Second City for a year and a half. I've been on this company for a year.
I've been with Second City for maybe a year. I've been with this company for almost 6 months.
I've been with, hard question. I've been with the company for about 4 months now, but I've been with Second City pretty consistently over the last 5 years.
And I've been with Second City for the last 11 years, and I've been the director of this company for the last 3 years.
And we'll get at what they mean by when they say they're with the company, and we'll get at what the difference means. And I know, how many of you have heard of Second City before today?
Oh, wow.
See, that's very cool.
That's awesome.
And I suspect you've heard about Second City because of all the famous alumni that have come out of that program. Arkansas Rep has been presenting Second City for the last, I'm looking at Lynn, 16 years. I think it's been at least 16 years because I think their first season here was the year before I came. And Second City has been coming here every other season and had doing a sit-down for 2 weeks. And they open tonight. We have a private performance tonight for Arvest Bank, who are one of the sponsors of Second City. And then it's going to run for 2 weeks, including late shows on this coming Saturday and next Friday and Saturday. We're very proud of our relationship with Second City. They are really a unique component of our programming. But let's begin, and let me ask the panel to talk a little bit, first of all, about the history of Second City. Who is Second City? Where does Second City come from? The name, everything like that. Talk a little bit about the history.
So Second City has been around for about 54 years. It started in Chicago with a group of theater students from the University of Chicago that decided to create the first theater in Chicago that did original work. Because most of the things before that were all touring companies or groups from New York that would put up plays or productions. And they felt like they needed to have a place that could speak to Chicago audiences talking about things that were happening there. So that group got together and started putting on shows in the Old Town neighborhood in 1959, and eventually got a lot of success and a lot of audiences that would come through loving the idea and the use of comedy and satire and being able to make fun of things that were happening in the city. So that theater grew to now be this kind of crazy theater company that now has 3 permanent locations, one in Toronto, one in Chicago, one in LA. We also had many different theaters in Detroit, in Denver for a while, in Cleveland. We also do sit-downs at places. We write specific things for specific shows, like say Baltimore or in Atlanta. So our theater has done a lot of things of bringing comedy and satire basically to the world. You might know a lot of our alumni, like Stephen Colbert or Bill Murray or Dan Aykroyd, and all those people are very connected to our world through coming back sometimes. We had a 50th anniversary not too long ago where a lot of those folks came back and did a special show kind of celebrating that history, but also bringing our brand of comedy to the world of using improvisation, which means making things up on the spot, to create in the moment, things are very real and raw in a way that normally you couldn't just write down if you did nothing but write it in a vacuum. And that's one of the things that is kind of unique about our comedy, is that when you watch a scene, even when you come see our show, is that it'll feel more natural than even the scripted material seems more natural than something you might see on television, because at some point we used the nature of making things up at some point to create that material. That kind of covers
thing
there.
And I think that have television shows like Saturday Night Live help to build the brand?
Yeah, so Saturday Night Live was one of the first shows that kind of came looking in Chicago for some of that talent. And that first cast of Saturday Night Live had a good majority of those folks were Second City alum. We also had our own show called SETV, which was produced in Canada, that also had a lot of those same folks from that beginning history of Second City bringing sketch comedy onto the screen. Recently, a lot of cool shows, like for example, the Key and Peele show, The Office, 30 Rock. A lot of those shows also feature a lot of our alum, and a lot of them have fun making jokes and referring back to their time in Chicago. If you ever watch 30 Rock, there's a lot of weird inside jokes that Tina Fey will have and do that are based on really things that she did when she was at Second City or when she was starting in Chicago, which is really fun and awesome to see.
And our SATV also gave us sort of the alumni base for movies like Best in Show.
Yes, Strange Brew, a
right.
whole bunch of those.
Mighty Wind, those films. Yeah. That's kind of the SCTV branch of Second City's history and alumni base,
and
right?
a lot of those movies and television shows use improvisation as well. Christopher Guest, who is not a Second City alum, but he uses a lot of Second City alums in his shows.
Right.
He uses a lot of improvisation when they create those movies. They have a loose idea of what's kind of happening, and then they kind of work from that. Another show that does that is Curb Your Enthusiasm, which also has several Second City alum that make their way onto that show. Also use that same model to create amazing television that you're always so surprised, like, how'd they do that? And a lot of that's because they improvise with the camera just rolling and then take the best stuff, and that's what winds up on the shows that you see on HBO.
Okay, here's a question for you. Are you born funny, or do you learn how to be funny?
Well, it can be a mixture of the two. I was actually a really quiet child, did a lot of listening, but I did grow up with a bunch of brothers. And for anybody who grows up with a bunch of brothers, there's really only one way to get through that, which is try to be as funny as you can and let all the ways they make fun of you roll off your back. I'm kidding, but...
Wow.
Was that applause?
That was applause. But I would say that I was probably born funny in some capacity, and then of course it developed just being in an environment where I kind of needed to be funny to get through. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's sometimes a kind of a misnomer of being born funny or learning to be funny. I think you are born funny, meaning your environment and growing up, your family and location and things like that. Those help you develop that, but you can learn comedy and you can study comedy, and I think that's a kind of big difference between those things. We've all studied comedy, and that's helped us filter how we're funny for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah, I would say also being a person who teaches a lot, I feel like you can learn to be funnier right? You can get, and take your style of funny, this table, I'm gonna knock this table over. Take your style of funny and get better at honing your voice and kind of focusing what you say and do. My mother would probably say that I was not born funny. She made sure to make that the first comment in an article they wrote in my hometown. Like, we didn't think he was funny. But because I grew up wanting to work for NASA. I went to school for computer science and physics. That's what I wanted to do for a living. And I found comedy in college randomly. So I think I personally learned that I was funny through doing comedy, though I wasn't always the joker. I was always the person like, get your homework done. Halloween is stupid. Why am I going to ask for candy when I could be doing work at home? True. I could be reading the encyclopedia instead. Very true. But I think that everyone, though, has the capacity to learn how to take what they find interesting and fun and be able to enhance that.
And so how do you talk about, Second City has a school.
Yes, we do.
What do you teach? How do you, and each of you could, what is your own background that brought you to where you are, where you are today? What, did you start out wanting to be a member of an improv troupe? You just talked about wanting to work for NASA.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Actually, weirdly, it's just like directing. Yeah, I started off obsessed with space since I was a child and growing up near Johnson Space Center. And it just happened I went to school at Loyola in New Orleans and was a resident assistant in charge of a bunch of students. And they said, you're funny, be in our sketch group. And I was like, okay, and then decided to do that. And ever since then, couldn't stop doing it. And I kind of realized through the course of that, my big thing that I always wanted to do with my life was affect people and affect change. And for me, originally, it was like, I want to go to space and bring this great things to the world. And comedy does that for me as well, of like affecting people. I was lucky enough to be on the main stage at Second City creating original shows and seeing people every night come in and affecting them. I was at the time right when Obama got elected, so I was able to like talk about that stuff and talk about race and be able to talk about what was happening in the country. That was just as rewarding for me as sending someone into space. So,
I actually, okay. I went to the comedy studies program at Second City, which is basically where you can take a semester and instead of going to London abroad, you go to Chicago. Have fun. And basically what I did is all day, every day of the week, I went to class and learned very basic structure that gave me a really strong foundation. So in my writing class, I learned the structure of a sketch and what does the middle of it look like? What does the beginning of it look like? What is the end supposed to function as? What is the difference between satire and parody? Why is that really important?
What is the difference between satire and parody?
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, I always have so much trouble with this. Okay, so parody is like thanks, small-minded peers. It's like an exaggerated version that, man, I'm really bad at this. It's a parody for me. You can add. There we go.
Parody mimics something and exaggerates it, whereas satire is more of a social commentary.
Thanks, Sarah. See, I knew that. I just didn't know how to say it. So I learned that and immediately forgot it, apparently. But in my movement class, I learned how do you create a character with your body, which then informs kind of what you're doing with the choices that you're making in your improv or in your writing. I also learned context in comedy, which we learned about memes, which was the first time I'd ever heard about memes, which is basically anything, which was a very difficult idea to learn, was that a meme is just an idea and it can be absolutely anything, and now it rules the internet. And then we also had comedy history, so I learned about, just absolutely everything, probably starting in the vaudeville, and we actually got to do a vaudeville performance, and we did this silent film performance as well, we also had to do stand-up, which was the first time I'd done stand-up, and now I do stand-up all the time. So that was a huge training experience for me, and it really launched, I think, was really launched the rest of everything that I would do in comedy. So yeah.
My personal experience is when I went to high school, my mother didn't sign the permission slip to allow me to play football. So I was wandering aimlessly through my life after that, and my theater teacher at the time, which was a requirement in high school, suggested that we explore what improvisation was. I'd never heard of it before in my life, and she actually only just heard about it. And so we and the rest of these people in the theater department kind of worked on like exploring what that was. And I really, really enjoyed it. Not as much as football, but I enjoyed it a lot. And then she totally incorrectly took a trip, all of us, to Chicago to see a performance at the Second City, which was wildly inappropriate of her to do. And during the performance, a lewd joke occurred. We'll just put it that way. But the laughter that had sustained was so long and so large. I mean, laughter for, in seriousness, minutes long. And in that time, I'm laughing at something that I know that I'm not supposed to be laughing at. And then I turned and looked at her, and she was also laughing super hard. And then she turned and looked at me and went, I just went back to watching, and I was like, oh my goodness, this has so much power. I mean, I'd never looked at my teacher before as an equal in the sense of like, we can find the same things funny. And then I realized I didn't have to respect her anymore, so. No, but she helped me discover Second City and find an avenue to get there. So after I went to college, I immediately moved to Chicago and went through their conservatory. And in the conservatory, you learn, as Anthony put, how to create sketch through improvisation, and that's basically to sum up what your entire time there is. And then went on to create a sketch show, and soon after worked in their kind of incubation program, and have worked for them ever since.
Okay. So I was also a theater major. I went to University of Maryland, and we did a show, I think my senior year there, called The Ash Girl, if any of you are familiar with it, which is a political kind of like dark Cinderella. And I played the stepmother, who was a crazy drunk, and I got to kind of goof around with the audience members during intermission out in the lobby as the character. So that was kind of my first foray into improv, and I remember the two professors that I were close with in the theater department. When I was graduating, I went and talked to them. They said, well, what are you going to do? I said, you know, I don't know. I'm thinking of moving to New York or LA. My friend and I, who goes to another school, we both have really been wanting to do that. And she goes, you know, I really see you in Chicago. All that improv you've done, like I could totally see you growing there. You get some good groundwork, and then you go to those cities. And I thought, yeah, right. I'm not going to Chicago. And then my other professor was like, if you don't go to grad school, you'll never get anywhere in theater, ever. And I said, okay, well, I'm not going to pay another, 40 grand to go to grad school. So didn't do that. I moved to Chicago without my friend, who ended up getting married to a guy she was dating at the time. So worked out for both of us. Anyways. Let's not get into the sob story side of it. Thank you very much. Appreciating it. Anyways, so then, yeah, you just go there, you take classes, you start doing your own work. I think the most important thing is doing your own work outside of these theaters and kind of creating your voice that way. And then came to the Second City.
So what's the the trajectory? You're here with a touring company. How many touring companies? Do directors and the powers that be look for the best and brightest out of the conservatory to go tour, and then the resident companies? What's the hierarchy of progress?
So it's a real weird wandering path of a lot of options to get hired in the city. The main way that people get hired is every year we have a general audition. We have a week in the summer where we have everyone from all over the So that's an 8-hour day that the directors and producers we will sit in a room and watch people 30 minutes at a time come in and improvise for us. The individual will call them back and do scenes, and then we'll take people from that to add to either the ships that we do. So we're on Norwegian cruise lines and we do ships, shows on those ships. So some folks will get hired to go into those shows. Sometimes we'll hire people to do shows in specific theaters and say in Baltimore. Actually, I think that Scott had a chance to do that to Dallas. To do a specific show written for a region that people get hired directly into that. We also will hire people to be part of our kind of incubator development groups that we have. I am in charge right now of a group called Repertory, which is an outreach university group, in which we bring in minority talent and they write a show that is geared around that voice and developing that voice and founding. But eventually, everyone is working towards being a part of our touring company. So one of the best kind of job you can get there and kind of start showing the path of kind of being a part of Second City history or kind of a company member of our theater is starting as a touring company member, which all of them are, and I was as well. I actually came here in 2006 to be Repertory to do a show my first year in touring. And so you wind up being an understudy, you eventually will tour, and then some of those folks will hopefully eventually make it to being on a resident stage. So in Chicago, we have 2 resident stages, the main stage and the ETC, that every year write at least 1 to 2 completely original shows. And those shows are created through improvisation. The one thing that's kind of cool about our way we create our shows is that we never close. We never take a show down and then have a break and then put another show up. That show will turn from the older show to the new show by trying out material in front of the audience. So right now, the ETC is creating a new show, so every night they'll take scenes out from the previous show and put up something that was brand new that they either just tried rehearsal that day, or somebody said, I want to do this idea, and they'll try it out in front of the audience. And the audience will decide what stays and what goes, based on the laughter it gets, or the reaction it gets based on what's going on. That's what kind of is a unique thing about our show, is that it always gets about the moment, but it has to also, unlike Saturday Night Live, which has every week things are new and it goes away, it has to also be rooted in that satire, something that also resonates with people at a core level. So we can't always just do scenes about, oh, this just happened, we're going to do some jokes about the numbers, but we will then have something more talking to the idea of how race works in America, or what is the feeling we have about the economy. And that allows us to have a show that can run for 6 months to a year at a time. But that then turns over, and then people will come and go. And eventually, we'll move on from Second City to work in other places, be it writing rooms or get hired by Saturday Night Live, other things like that as well. Or become directors or touring companies and foster other people to hopefully go along that journey as well. So that was kind of my path. I toured, I got hired in general, I toured, and then I wound up writing 2 shows in the main stage.
But where do the ideas for the sketches come from? And it's not really a democracy, is it? I mean, it's not like, oh, I've got an idea, or is it really? Is it democratic? Who says your idea is terrible? I mean, who decides what ends up, where do the ideas come from for creating new sketches?
Sure. Me and another member who is not here, Adam Peacock, were sitting in the back of the van. I think we were on hour 4 of maybe a 6-hour drive, and we started doing a bit, as you might call it, which is basically just joking around, where we were 2 radio hosts, and then we were doing that, and we were all kind of laughing, and then we were like, wait, why don't we do that? So we actually ended up trying it in front of an audience. We improvised it, and we found some stuff that we really liked, and we'll actually be doing that scene tonight. But we did have to bring it and show it to Anthony, which he gave us the green light, but if he didn't have to. But then again, it's on us to kind of make sure that when we do show it to Anthony, he's seeing kind of the best version of it that he can see. So there's definitely some responsibility on us to try as hard as we can to put the best stuff up there, and then he can also very much help us to take it to the next level. Yeah, that's my experience.
And I would say one of the things that is kind of cool is the audience, especially in a resident show, the audience makes that choice of what's funny or not, or what works or not. The director's job is to observe that and help foster it and make it better, or start to make choices of, is this worth pursuing? But the audience will make that choice of what they be later into. And sometimes it'll surprise you. You put up things, you're like, I don't know if it's gonna work, but let's see what happens. And the audience will make that choice for you. Now, when it comes to where scenes come from, there is a little bit of mixture. Sometimes it's from funny things that happen. Sometimes it's from something you really are concerned or care about that's happening in the world. And then there's also a little bit of that mixture too of, especially in Chicago, things that we feel the onus to really take. So in Chicago, like if something's happening with the mayor, we have to do something about it. If that event takes place, we'd be remiss if we did not attack that event. It's our job. So that's also some of these are written for us beautifully by people who get on camera and do great fun things for us.
Sometimes they come from you guys. Well, sure, we can get a suggestion from you and then we'll improvise a scene and your suggestion will guide the scene. It will become our creation thanks to you.
What can Little Rock audiences expect from the show that you guys are going to create and do here at the Rep? And talk about a little bit, I know you're doing improv and sketch comedy. Talk a little bit about the difference, but what kind of things what's a show like that, if they haven't been to the Rep to see a show or your touring show, what's it like? What can they expect?
Sure. The show has, and we've thrown this around a couple of times, sketch comedy, and sketch are like what I would call kind of short to middle length scenes, somewhere in the region of like 3 to 5 minutes or 5 to 7 minutes, depending on timing. And those are written scenes, and a lot of our written scenes, I would say somewhere in the region for the show, probably 55 to 60% of the show are what we call archive scenes. So those are scenes that used to be on either the main stage or the ETC, and in knowing that we were coming here, we realized these are scenes that we haven't done before because we have a great long-lasting relationship with the theater, and also scenes that we believe that would work well for a show for you as an audience. And then another of those sketch scenes, probably 40%, 35-40% of those are ones that we've written specifically, just our touring company. We knew that we were coming here, and so some of them are specific. We thought you'd like those specifically for the show. And then we have a lot of improvisation throughout the show as well. So you'll see a lot of written material, and then we'll come out and get suggestions from the audience, and then we'll create special scenes that are only for that night. We'll do them that night, and that is it. So those are very special and specific for you guys when you come see the show. And then after the show is over, we'll do an encore as well, where we'll improvise yet again. And then if there is time, and hopefully there is, we then will also present other things that we're working on that hopefully in the future will make their way into a show, or something that we just want to work on, or something that we thought that you guys might think is funny. And we'll do that especially for the evening as well.
I think as an audience member to myself, seeing shows, I think you can expect to kind of leave the show being like, oh my gosh, that one scene that's happened to me. I think there will be things that resonate with you in everyday life, and you kind of, like we said, the satire, you find the humor in things that happen to you or that you see happen to other people. And we're, commenting on that. So I think you can expect to connect, hopefully.
Let's open for questions. What would you all like to know? Yes. And I think are there mics to carry around, or just going to have people? What's that? They are coming with microphones right now. Here they come. Right here. Yes, ma'am.
Would you say something both as teachers and performers about the metamorphosis that's constantly happening to comedy? I can remember when I thought Laugh-In was funny, and now when I see it, it is so stale. So it is a constant process. Could you say something about teaching and then performing and how that changes?
I think the reason why comedy is ever evolving is because we're ever evolving as people. The things that we find interesting and the things that what do people care about right now? And you get the great opportunity of being able to capture that for a moment, and then you get to give that away to the world, and then it changes. We commented on it. Now we're done commenting on it. And so I think when you look back, it's really important from a comedic standpoint to look back at something like Latin, which I think is a really great example, where at that time, that comedy was very important, and there was nothing like it around, and it was subversive in its existence in that moment, and it is fascinating to look back and be like, I can't believe people cared about that. That's funny. But it was really, really important, and in my opinion, still remains important, because I'm a comedy nerd. But we have that, both that opportunity and, in my opinion, the duty to use comedy to comment on the things that we care about in this moment in time. And then if you're good at it, you change.
And I think as being a teacher, I'm lucky to work with a lot of high school students, and it's interesting of seeing their, every summer camp, the different thing they're into. I always ask, what's the thing you're watching right now? And every year it's always different and changing with what kind is the hip hop thing. But it's amazing for them as high school students to enjoy this one scene that we do a lot. It won't be in the show. It's called Pictionary, which was written by Steve Carell, was in that scene. It is from the early 90s, and that scene still tours around today. And when those kids read it, they laugh, even though they haven't been in relationships like that. They see it in their parents. And there's a thing of two couples who are fighting. The guys are getting upset as they're losing to their wives in the game of Pictionary. And just that resonates and kind of is able to keep happening. Because it is a universal thing that will always kind of be there. So there's kind of this fun, interesting thing of there are almost like two types of comedy. There's the comedy that's of the now, that's very much in what are we talking about, what we're doing, and there's some things that are just kind of universally based that humans have done forever, and that's the reason why Shakespeare or things like that still plays or works. There's comedy that's like that too. And that's kind of, we hope, it's kind of awesome that we get to be a part of a place that kind of it creates or is kind of the foundation of a lot of that in America right now, that 100 years from now, people will look back and watch some of our alumni's creations and still get that and still feel that that is funny even today, because it's how people interact or work.
I think one of the best vessels to, as far as performing and why it's ever evolving is we're told a lot that the best instrument you can have for comedy is yourself. And you know, why reach out to other things when it's how you're feeling at a moment in time, whether you've fallen in love or you've been broken up with, a family member passed away. Like, using that feeling and putting it into comedy is one of the best things that you can do.
Yeah. And one last thing for that, going along with what Sarah just said, one of my favorite things I ever got as advice during the 50th anniversary, Stephen Colbert was backstage and we were hanging out, and he said to my cast, who was the cast at the time, said, "Thank you so much for letting us be here." And we're like, "What?" "Oh, thank you for being here." And he's like, no, like, this place right now is amazing and different because it is always about the 6 people who happen to be here right now. This building is about the commentary that you can only make being in that moment. And once you leave, or the people who are eventually going to come in, it's the beauty that it's always capsulized in that moment. So we are coming into your places will always be that cast moment to talk about the world. And that is, I think, why it is ever evolving too. Like Sarah said, we have a kind of system of where it forces that thing of we have to talk about now, because it's our duty. It's our job as satirists.
Yes, ma'am.
I saw you 16 years ago, not you, but when it came here 16 years ago and they did the Pictionary, and I was going to comment on it. How do you know what, and first of all, they were the sisters, the women were sisters, which was critical to the scene. I don't want to give it away. But anyway, it stuck in my mind for these last 16 years, and I wonder how you know what skits, or what skits really will carry forward. I mean, you can get laughs from a lot of things. That was, to me, so classic.
Yeah, it's weird when you're writing it, you don't know, and you don't care, if that makes sense. Because I was lucky enough to create 2 shows that just like that show. And when they wrote that show, they weren't trying to write stuff that's going to be around for 20 years, right? They just wrote what they felt and what they knew, but it was so based in the idea of this is what relationships are like. And I think that as a director, one of my jobs is to look at those scenes and pick out ones that I feel like could translate or always be relevant. There are scenes that I'll pick sometimes to go into a show that might be older, but I think that it'll come around and make sense, especially looking at the time. There's some scenes that will go away and won't really work for a while, but then something will happen in the world, and then it's like, oh, you're listening to people and checking what people are doing behind the scenes. Oh, here's this fun scene that is from the 80s or 70s. How do I know that? So we actually at Second City retain all of the shows and the scenes that happen. So we tape every show that takes place. We have a special taping to keep a track of it. We also keep copies of everything, and there's all in the computer that we're able to access. So at any moment, I could give them like, hey, go watch this scene, and they can pull up that scene and watch it. Going back to pretty much the 80s, there's very clear ones, and then we have the scripts of every show that's been written since 1959. Yes and no. So archive scenes, they can't really change a ton other than making it themselves. So they have to be able to live inside of it, and I'll let them answer about that. We'll also update things as well based on a reference. But those archive scenes are set, and that's what we call them, those. Versus their original scenes, they are free to improvise and play with and change things as time goes on and make it themselves. But I'll probably let you guys speak to that about being able to play inside of an archive scene, a scene that's set.
Yeah, well, when we get the scenes, we're responsible for learning the lines, of course, but also you watch the video. So, for example, for Pictionary, if I'm playing Fran, I really have to mimic what Fran is doing. And once I get that done, I can then, as I'm doing the scene in the show, kind of figure out what I like, what to me is funny, what I can add a little bit to make it exciting for myself to be doing the scene all the time. Any actor kind of looks for that. But also, what can I add just a little bit that won't change what the scene is trying to do or what is happening, that will just kind of give my own little signature.
Yeah, I think that in that example, if I were playing Steve Carell's character, I would do everything in my power to maintain the integrity and the original intention of the scene, but I am not Steve Carell by a long shot. I am who I am, and so I need to play that character in the way that I play it, as long as it doesn't take away from the original intention and integrity of the scene.
Sir.
Political humor. We could all think of tons of really funny liberals, like Carell and Tina Fey and all. Not conservatives. When I think of people like Hannity and Limbaugh, they're just angry, it seems. And I wonder if you guys have any thoughts on that and what it might mean.
Well, this is a pretty easy question. I think generally speaking, some of the things that Colbert is able to get away with, it seeds itself in the notion of being able to laugh at oneself and to be able to laugh at one's situation. And I would wager that there's something in there, the ability to take yourself seriously when you need to and then not when you don't. And I think that there's some, like I said, generally speaking, I don't want to be carried out of here with pitchforks and torches, but that generally speaking, that there's something in there of like, when you're able to kind of laugh at yourself and poke fun of yourself, it's not so much about, it's just showing people that you're a person just like anybody else. And when political leaders or political satirists don't have that capability, it can make it difficult for us as an audience to listen to them or to care about what they're saying fully, because it doesn't seem like they're fully human. I think it's a very human quality to be able to make fun of yourself, or to realize that your predicament, your situation isn't always serious 100% of the time. I don't know.
Thank you, Scott.
Yes, Judy.
How many traveling groups are there, tour groups, and do you gear things to the locale?
There are 3 traveling groups. They go by colors. Actually, we're blue, and then there's a red and green group. And yes, we will. So if we're going to be in a place like Little Rock for 2 weeks, we will definitely try and take some things that are local or that have been going on in the town or something like that, and we'll try and put that in the show to hopefully make people feel a little more at home or resonate a little better. Yeah, we definitely will.
And we are also sensitive to your local situation. So we're very aware of the devastation that has occurred locally, and we have made a change and are working on our show to assist with your local disaster relief. And so we are looking to partner with the theater in doing that and figuring out a way to use our show, because it is timely and important to inform the audience of that and to find ways for us to assist. And we're going to try to work something in where we can actively gather donations to assist that. And again, that's something that I feel like falls in line with what I call our duty, is being aware and sensitive of what's going on in the moment, and see if we can comment, and even now in this time, because there are many creative ways to do it, assist in that moment. And I think that's something that we're working on and hoping to instill in the show.
And usually a couple weeks out, somebody from Second City will give me a call, give our staff a call, and just touch base. What's happening in the area? Are there things you'd like us to highlight, or things you'd like us to stay away from? And when we have that conversation, almost every time before Second City comes down, just to give a little insight into, well, here are some things. Of course, right now everything's about the politics, and the primaries and all that. And we talk about those things just to give a little heads up. And there are other cities, larger cities, where Second City will write specific shows all about that community. But those are usually in some of the larger cities where they'll sit down for a longer period of time. Yes, in the back.
Thank you for coming. I'm a student here at the Clinton School, and I'm kind of glad you brought up the sensitive issue about things going on in the area that may be kind of sad to talk about, because I was wondering, when I come to the show, I'm going to expect to laugh a lot, and I may cry from laughing so hard, but I would not expect to cry. Have there ever been really serious moments, maybe through the improv, that you're thinking, oh man, this really needs to go in the serious direction, not in a funny direction?
There are. One of the things that's kind of amazing about a Second City show is it is a theater. It's a theatrical show. So there are moments or things that might be nice or sweet or more acting moments, and that always just clown, funny, crazy town. And hopefully they work in conjunction and bring you to both places. I'll just give a personal experience of show. Once again, as I said, this wasn't what I expected to be doing with my life. So when my parents first came to Chicago to visit me and kind of see what I was doing, this is when I actually first started touring with Second City, they went around, they met people, it was a real fun experience. And then they came to see their first Second City show to kind of see, like, what is it that you're signing up for your life? So they came to see a main stage show. And my dad, now almost 2 years ago, passed away of cancer. But he lived with having throat cancer and having a trach for since I was college on. So, and my mom was a nurse, so she was able to take care of him throughout those last, 14 years or so of his life. And there is a scene in the show they came to see. That show was called Red Scare, and it was a very political charge kind of show that had a lot of politics in it. And then near the end of the show, there's this really awesome, sweet scene about a guy who is a coach who is trying to take care of his wife who is dying of cancer. And the whole scene is kind of this, you get humor out of him using these coach analogies, like, you gotta box out cancer, and all these kind of things of like using that to relate to his wife, who is waiting for test results to see if the last round of chemo has worked. And in it, he has this moment where he says, it's like, you gotta stay in there, because there's no subs. There's no subs on the bench. And has that moment where he breaks down and hugs her, and then gets the news that things are working, but they're still out of the woods, but they're working. And he kind of turns around and is like, yeah, eat it, cancer! And like kind of has this thing going back into coach mode, but still ends with him kind of like bowing his head of saying, like, this is a coping mechanism. It was awesome to be sitting in that show and watching my parents laughing and crying at the same time, because that is their life. That was what their life was, of them constantly fighting that, but keeping those spirits up because they loved each other and they were in it together. And it was so amazing to see this, and then them to see, like, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to have people have the same experience of having comedy be a nice release from their lives, but also relate to them in a way and give them strength and power to do things. All right, sorry about that. Okay.
Yeah, I have a much better story. No.
No, I think emotion and laughter are definitely tied together, and they depend on each other. I mean, one of the themes in our show is talking about truth, and like, what better and richer laugh comes from speaking a truth, or like an emotional truth about our lives? I mean, and that's the rewarding laughs that we want, is harping on those things. There's a woman who just left the main stage named Katie Rich, who is now a writer for SNL, and I think she has mastered the art of that. All of her scenes, she has a song, and one of the lines in it is, all we want in this life is to be someone to somebody else. Saying that's all that matters. And I remember just hearing that line, it's like, oh my gosh, that's so true. And she just harps on all these truths in our lives and things that we want and that mean things to us as people. And it got some of the biggest laughs, but you look around and like you see people tearing up because it's like, this is true. It's amazing. So yeah, I think definitely every show has aspects of that as well as laughter.
Just really quickly to go back to the Pictionary question, I think that's what makes those scenes that stick with you forever, is the ones where you go, they said the truth in a way that I had never heard before and that no one has ever talked to me about before. And I didn't have to have a conversation. I could watch a scene and laugh and just kind of experience it instead of kind of thinking about what I was saying and being careful of who's hearing it. Just being able to, everyone, 300 people in main stage together acknowledging the truth through 2 to 3 minutes of prolonged laughter. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a high school theater teacher, and hopefully, Scott, my kids still do respect me a little bit. I've been teaching about 7 years. I always come to the matinees, and thank you so much. Those matinees are great. So I come every year. And I've always wondered, how do you guys change for high school students? Do the shows change? Do you guys, before the show, say, this scene yes, this scene no? Do you push jokes harder? Are there different timings, et cetera?
We definitely take a high school audience into consideration. While we, the brand, Second City's brand of comedy is sort of going into those truthier things, there are things that, like, we don't want to be like swearing for 2 hours straight for a high school audience. That's not appropriate, and what value comes out of that. So we definitely do take that into consideration a great deal. And we also, I believe, want to, sometimes high school audiences, given geography, don't know the state, don't know what improvisation is. So we also take that into consideration of, we're going to put in more improvisation so that we can invite them into this world and then really let them see all of the different avenues that can be taken. So absolutely, when we know we're doing a show for high school kids, we we take it very seriously. It's a very, I would even say the president of Second City would probably mark that as one of the most important things that we do when we tour is who's the next Second City person in the audience that doesn't know that they're the next Second City person. So it's very, very important to us.
I also want to say I love your mustache. It's amazing. Just letting you know that.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us today and to thank the Clinton School for making this event possible. Come and see Second City for the next 2 weeks at the Rep, and thank you to our panel, and thank you very much.
Thank you, that was great.